Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Decode podcast. And today's very special guest is Damian Hasse. How are you, Damian?
Doing good. How are you, Leo?
Yeah, very well, my friend. Very well. This is our second interaction in terms of getting kind of pre-ready for this podcast. And I'm super excited because when we last spoke, it was almost like you were spilling your entire guts. And I was like, Damian, don't. There's so much gold here. Refrain. So again, thank you so much for your time and thank you for accommodating us. And I guess for our audience who doesn't know you, please introduce yourself to the world and give us a brief overview of you and your career. Yeah.
Sure. So thank you, Leo, for having me. Really appreciate it. And to give some background, who I am, how I ended up here, and also how I connected with Leo. So I've been doing security pretty much for my entire career. I started over 20 years ago. I will argue before even security was a thing, before you can actually get a degree or something along those lines, right? And mainly the draw that I had on security was due to the challenge, just the puzzle. It's like somebody tells you, you cannot do X. And I'm like, why is that? Why I cannot do X, right? Why is that not possible? What prevents me to do that? And that's just what drove me into security. So to go briefly, right? I've been at Moveworks for about 3 years. Actually, for over 3 years to be precise. I joined before the AI wave, even though the company has been doing AI for 7-8 years at this point in time. The reality is, I saw the value, the potential that it could have. When I joined Moveworks, we do conversational AI, provide support through Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Chat. And from my point of view, it's like, wow, there's beauty on this. I want to be able to do more. And then GPT came a year later, and now it's like been riding that wave. But it's been great, right? Being able to see the potential. And just you can argue I got lucky or whatever. I know I don't foresee the future. I'm not a fortune teller or anything like that.
Yeah.
But anyways, before Moveworks, I was at Amazon for about 9 years, leading the security, privacy of the Amazon consumer devices, as well as the services that supported those devices. So that's Echo, Alexa. I was there before Echo existed. I saw how that product got created from scratch. It was my first quote unquote exposure to AI ML in a company setting. I was at VMware period, and before that I was at Microsoft for about 12 years. And literally I joined Microsoft before there was, you can argue, a security team, right? It was before the trustworthy computing memo from Bill Gates. But to even go before that, right, what was my drive? I was in high school, to put things in perspective. As I said, it was just that challenge, kind of, I'm originally from Argentina, and getting access to software was expensive. And also it's like you wanted to play a game, but there were restrictions. So how will you go about that, right? It's like, well, are they really blocking you from doing something or not? But more importantly, I was working for the equivalent of the IRS here in the US. I don't know what's in the UK, but basically the Internal Revenue Service, the one that collects the taxes, right? That part of the government in Argentina. And there was this big consultant firm, I'm not going to name them, that they developed this software, and they say, yes, we created this great encryption and it's super secure. Jokingly, they were saying, yes, we're going to kill the developer after they're done with it, right? For it's like, well, top secret. Nobody knows. Super cool. They didn't give us much. They just gave us the code, the binary, not even the code, not the source code, the binary. And this was on a terminal, the green terminals, the ones that if you kind of look at old movies, you're like, yeah, those green terminals, there's no GUI or anything. IBM 3151, that's the name of the terminal that I was using. And I was just debugging, trying to figure out, what was this code doing? right? How come it was so secure? And it took me a while to start to untangle things. And eventually I ended up figuring out the crypto algorithm they were using. It was IDEA. For those of you not familiar, now it's no longer being used, but it was similar to DES, another crypto. I tried to I think it was to replace this. I'm going by memory now, so somebody probably will correct me later, say, no, Damian, we're wrong, but nevertheless. But what was more interesting is, as I started to debug, I said, fine, now I know the crypto algorithm. I'm going to write my own, and then I'm going to go try to decrypt the content, right? I was like, okay. But what happened? It turns out, so number one, I should have mentioned this earlier, they have hard-coded the key. Big mistake, big no-no. You don't do that. You don't hard-code a key, right? So it's like, okay. So I had the key, I had the crypto algorithm, I tried to decrypt it, it didn't work. I'm like, why it wasn't working? It doesn't make sense. I mean, I have all the pieces. But turns out that they ended up changing the crypto algorithm. Not only they hard-coded the key, they ended up changing the crypto algorithm. I still to this day, I don't know why they did that. I don't think it was performance related, but I have no idea. But that was another big no-no. You don't change a crypto algorithm. You don't know what happens when you do that. So anyways, so I ended up figuring out what they did. I took my code and then ended up decrypting that. And then I think it was the next day or whatever, a couple of days later, we ended up meeting with this big consulting firm. And I just told them, yeah, all of that stuff you did, in reality, the security is not there. And they're like, how did you do that? That's not possible. Blah, blah. Well, yeah. Anyway, so one thing led to another. But for me, it's all about the drive. It's just about that challenge, right? I have that feeling of satisfaction after I was able to do something. And to do something that, in theory, it's not possible. You can't do it, right? I'm like, okay, yeah, it is. It's just a matter of trial and error, failure. And by the way, I'm sure it took me maybe a week or whatever amount of effort, but the satisfaction that I got at the end, the reward was super, super, super exciting. So anyway, so just briefly, a quick intro of myself, going back to, and that unfolded, I think that was in early 90s or late, mid-90s to be precise. So that's why I said I've been doing security for over 20 years.
Nice.
In perspective.
And it's almost like the inquisitive nature that you have is kind of then opened up the box, Pandora's box for security. And then, as you said, that's led you to some really big companies to effectively build, I would assume, the first iterations of security. And, what was that like back in the early days of Microsoft? And I think you also mentioned Amazon, kind of, because everyone loves to hear these stories. I love to hear them. I mean, who cares if the audience love them? But I love to hear about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So at Microsoft, let me give you a little bit more info, which it was interesting. Yeah. I was coming from a Unix background. I didn't like Microsoft products. This is, to put things in perspective, this is 1999. Okay. And when I was at school, I came to school here to the US to do my undergrad. And when I interviewed a lot of companies. This is before the .com, before everything just went south. But I interviewed companies. The one that I actually had the most fun based on the people that I met was Microsoft, right? They were challenging me. The questions they were asking, the people, the discussions that I was having, it was great. And this wasn't security people. For the most part, with one exception, I'm not going to mention them, but with one exception, there was no single company that had a security team necessarily back then. But I really like the people. And I said, you know what? Why don't I just go to Microsoft, even though I was accepted to do a PhD at the University of Waterloo, etc. I was like, you know what? Let me just go give it a shot and see what happens. If I don't like it, I can always go back to academia. But from my point of view, that was the drive, even though I didn't like Microsoft products, okay? And I was there, started working. I was a software development engineer in test. So I was developing software to test the security features, right? And one of the core areas that I owned back in the day is just the access control of the Windows core system, right? Just how that pieces work. And I had a lot of fun. Within, I think, 2 years, I remember, and some of the probably people on listening to the podcast might not know, but if they search about Slammer, which brought down the internet, right? I still remember to this day, I was working there at Microsoft, and all of a sudden, it's like, why things are not working the normal way, connectivity issues, etc. Just Slammer was hitting. I mean, it was a big impact there. And going back and going a tiny bit, my memory is, yes, there were security updates to fix SQL Slammer. It was just cumbersome for people to be able to apply it, right? And in certain cases, and I don't remember all of the details, but I think on Windows itself, there was a component impacted by Slammer as well, SQL, which in reality, the update came in later. I'm going by memory on this, right? So it wasn't as streamlined as it is today, where we updates happen on a regular cadence, right? But anyways, the trustworthy computing memo of Bill Gates came up. And I was thankful for it. That's kind of when the core security team was formed. I joined that team a bit naturally. I was able to, right? I think at that right around the time, I don't remember the specifics, the timing, but I think it was just before I joined the security team. I found a pretty cool vulnerability on Windows Server 2003. This was before it was released. It was pretty important, impactful, and it had visibility of the executives, etc. Not because of me, but just it spread across the entire operating system. It wasn't just the one single code fix that needed to be done, just because we didn't know what the implications were, how to make it all work. And it was around how, to put things in perspective, it was around how security happens on the threads themselves, right? As a malicious actor, you could potentially take over a thread that it was running within the operating system, which you were not meant to. But anyways, so stakes were high. I mean, threads are used all over the place in an operating system, as we know. So stakes were high. How do we ensure that if we change permissions, things won't break? Because sometimes, as we know, programs, code tends to take advantage of the lacks of security, right? And when you put security in place, things start breaking. But anyways, so around that time, I ended up joining, as I said, the security team. And one of the other things that you and I chatted before was my passion for working with people, helping grow individuals. I started from an individual contributor, starting to manage people. And I also remember writing or helping write. I'll be honest, there was another person that we were working together on this. The job families. What is a security engineer supposed to do? What is it, a junior versus a senior one, etc. Right? What does it all that entail? So it was, in my mind, it was just a great experience to be able to have, and stakes were high. People were, I mean, I remember also where there was the campaign done, no more free bugs, basically, because people wanted, at that time, Microsoft was not part of a bug bounty, even though bug bounty started to become popular. Also, we ended up putting in place the patch Tuesday, so the releases there. I was part of that team. I didn't have a say necessarily on whether to do it, but the team that I managed back then was the Microsoft Security Response Center engineering team. So we were the engineering aspects, looking at all of the updates, all of the patches, that were released, making sure that we're solid. And in some cases, we made mistakes. I still remember some of the lessons on that. But anyways, it was a great experience at a great time, even though I don't know, I have a good number of stories on how hard it was just being able to secure code base that to some extent in certain areas was not developed with security in mind, right? It's like, hey, what can we do? Right. But anyways, sorry. I'm just
No, no, no.
going into some of the
On,
details.
I think I said to you before, Damien, and a part of me wishes we recorded it because some of the content we got in our last session was really, really good. And, for me, speaking to peers in the industry that, have far glamorous careers than me and hearing those stories. And, you did mention some of those challenges. And that kind of brings me to the next aspect would be, talk me through some of those challenges that you were faced with in your career. You've worked for some really big companies. You've probably seen a hell of a lot of crazy stuff. You were doing things that now are synonymous with the world, like Patch Tuesdays and everything else. And you're doing bug bounties and stuff like that as well before they were kind of mainstream. So, yeah, if you've got any good anecdotes or anything that you can run me through, and again, they can be professional, personal, entirely up to you.
Sure. So let's go. I'll continue a little bit with Microsoft, and then switch over to Amazon as well. But from my career, when I was at Microsoft, I was fortunate enough that I didn't pursue necessarily a title. I care about the challenge. I care about ongoing learning, right? And along the same lines, I wanted to make sure that I offer those opportunities to people on my team as well, right? How can I empower them to keep growing, to keep learning? And this happened a few times in my career where somebody wanted to learn how to be a manager, right? And going from an IC to a manager, it's not as easy as it might sound, right? As an IC, I mean individual contributor. And why is that? Because on your day-to-day, you might end up, what I used to do before I became a manager, and I became a manager of a small team in the beginning, so I still have individual contributor responsibilities. I literally have source code on one side of my screen, and on the other side, I was debugging that source code, just trying to kind of map things up. Back then, things were a bit harder, just from a UX perspective, but nevertheless. And now all of a sudden, you're like, yeah, you're talking to someone on the team. It's like, hey, I'd like to know, what does it mean to be a manager? How can you manage people, etc.? So it's like, how do you have those conversations? How do you have not the easy one? They're like, you're doing a great job, but like you're struggling a bit on that space, right? And how do you tease that out? How can you help them overcome some of the challenges? Is it because they don't have the skills necessarily? And if so, how can I help that person get those skills? So I'll say over my career, it happened a few times where people ended up going into manager roles from IC, and in some cases, they ended up doing outstanding. And in some other cases, it's like, oh, okay, things didn't work out, but that's fine. You can still go back to an IC. And the key is how you do that correctly. How it's not about, oh, you did a bad job. I'm like, well, you try things out. Maybe you can start, if anybody here listening is interested, well, start with an intern. Maybe it's about 3 months, right? You get to oversee the full spectrum, right? Of ideally, if it's an intern project, it's a full project from beginning to end. You get to assess, work with someone, mentor, coach that individual over those 3 months. And then at the end, it's like, okay, did you enjoy that? Or you find it too hard, too difficult? You're like, I want to pull my hair out. Well, okay, depending on where you ended up, you're like, oh, I loved it. I want more. Like, okay, great. If that's the case, good. Let's figure out how we can make that happen. But over my career, I've seen that happening and been able to enable those cases. I think it's key so people can grow. Which brings me to to another thing that I started doing. I think this is when I was at Microsoft, so over 10 years ago at this point in time, which is bringing Harvard Business Review articles or similar content to that to read within my team. And you're like, why are you doing that? It makes no sense. You have a bunch of engineers, security person, privacy people. I was like, what are you doing? From my point of view, and this is how I see myself, I was like, I'm 100% on security. I'm 100% on privacy. I care. I'm passionate. I try to read a lot. Some stuff that I do read, etc. I just beyond my knowledge. I was like, okay, good. Let's just keep pushing the envelope, right? So I can get better. But one area that I noticed struggling with, even myself, because for me, I have a science background, math background, right? Things tend to be very precise, and with humans, things are not precise, right? We all have that, and it's like, okay, how can I help people do better on their soft skills? And that's where those Harvard Business Review articles or equivalent, right, help drive some of those conversations. I did that. I have an MBA, and I kind of got some data tidbits from it, and I started to use that myself, but also sharing with others. And the approach that I started doing, I think this was maybe around Amazon time, bringing those articles, have a meeting once a month. It was optional for people to attend on my team. Usually most people ended up finding useful and attending, etc. We read those articles and then discussed the topic. And the topic vary, right? Whether it's better listening, whether it's how you can craft your own career, about leadership, about managing people, but it's about the soft skills, those squishy areas that is not precise, and you need to mold for each of the individuals. So I think that to me, and I still to this day I do it, still pretty religiously, and in some cases I'm not the one bringing the content, which it's like, okay, other people seem to find it useful and thankful for it, and they are the ones driving those conversations as well. One other aspect of that as well, and this is something that I instituted when I was at Amazon, I don't remember, maybe 10 years ago, I don't remember the exact time frame, but career discussions. That's, I think, an interesting topic. And you're like, is that security related or not? I go back to, I care about the people within my team. I care a lot. And how do I enable to keep them growing? How can I ensure that things are working correctly? And for me, some of the challenges that I saw was things were not happening quick enough. Like the systems that companies try to put in place, for me, they weren't working, right? I ended up learning about what somebody wanted to do a bit too late. And I was like, how can I do that sooner? How can I have that conversation sooner? And it's not that I didn't have trust with the people. It's just, it didn't happen, just a conversation. And by the way, I'm no expert on this. This is just things that I try, fail, learn, and iterate it, and keep going. So now what I do, every quarter, I have, instead of a regular one-on-one discussion, I have a career discussion. And it's a set of questions. It's the same questions that we discuss every single time. It's like, Damian, it's not repetitive, etc. Some of the questions could be repetitive, but the intent is just the framework. You can argue force. It's a bit too strong of a word, but force that conversation, force a discussion. How are things going, right? What is the next thing you want to do? Kind of look yourself into the next year, 2 years, 3 years, right? What are the skills that you want to be able to learn? And that's what led to very healthy conversations with people. So for me, I care a lot about that. So I spend a good amount of my time. How can I help others? But I also spend a good amount of my time, obviously, on the technical side. When the whole GPT, switching gears here, but the whole GPT became to life, I had to recalibrate my brain on how to look at security challenges, privacy challenges. What does it really mean? The one concrete example that I have, which still bugs me a little bit today, is the term jailbreak. From the earlier days, a jailbreak is something that focus on an Android phone or maybe an iPhone that you ended up just bypassing a bunch of the security measures that they put in place to get to a root level or equivalent, right? I was like, so stakes are very high. And then I started to see the term jailbreak use with GPT, where like, oh, we ended up doing kind of the prompt injection type of attack or etc. And I'm like, is that really a jailbreak, or is that just how the model was designed and maybe doesn't have all of the right safeguards? I don't know. I mean, now I do use it, but it wasn't just an easy one, and also had to recalibrate on how to think about the security on the AI space. One thing I want to backtrack. When I was at Microsoft, there were a lot of great people that I work with, and they enable me to do a lot. And I'm just going to name a few to thank them, right? With the Matt Tomlinson, George Starakopoulos, Andrew Cushman, Mike Howard, David LeBlanc. It just literally keep on pushing. And it gave me Steve Libner, another great person. They gave me a lot of leeway to explore, to try, to fail. But they were there just to help me out and just keep on going. So I had a great experience and opportunity. So, anyways.
No, absolutely love it. You can't beat a good name drop, especially people that have allowed you that freedom, or either the peers, colleagues, or managers, where they really take an insight and allow you to grow. And you made a lot of really good pointers there about individual contributors moving into management. It's funny, like road testing on interns to see if you really enjoy management. I've had a few ICs in my time moved into management, and they like, we don't want to deal with the politics, the HR development. They actually, I think a lot of people just like to do their own thing when it comes to, like, they just want to write code, build new features, work on cool stuff, and finding a good balance between the growth element within yourself and other people. You're very much like myself, Damian. We love to see people really reach that potential, grow, and I think because it makes everything better. In my opinion, it makes the environment better. And again, I know people that like, I don't want to be a manager. I just want to be an architect. That's it. I'm like, I don't want to deal with it. And it's like, and I know other people, it's like, maybe a sysadmin, like, I want to be a CISO or a CTO. This is my trajectory. I need those rituals every week or every month with my manager to talk about where I am on my level framework, my objectives, OKRs, whatever it may be, and just having that kind of discipline. But again, it's not for everyone, as you said. But yeah, moving on to our midsection of the podcast, Damian, is a topic you want to discuss that you feel needs relevance within the industry, because hey, let's face it, there's lots of kind of crazy stuff going on. So yeah, do you have a specific topic you just love to debate right now?
Oh, well, one topic that is going around a lot, it's about AI, ML, and I do that a lot over here. I don't know if discuss, but I can just tell you, how do I continually stay sharp on the space that it's evolving very, very quickly, right? And here at Moveworks, I remember, as I said, when GPT came out, it's like, okay, what are the new challenge with generative AI, right? We use it as part of our one of the core pieces of our product as we provide support. But how do we do it safely, right? How do we ensure that the right set of safeguards, going back to what I mentioned earlier, are in place, so when people are using in the context of work, right, it provides the right responses, right? It's accurate. It doesn't, hallucinations one aspect, but how do we kind of prompt injections, limit that, prompt leakage, right? Does the AI can become an admin, and does it try to assess what is the identity of a user? So being able to safeguard, put the proper safeguard in place, it wasn't, I would say, something trivial, and something that we continue to evolve for sure, based on the new models being released, new research done on the security privacy space. We had conversations on, okay, if we need to execute code, what could we do? And we ended up creating what I feel it's a pretty decent sandbox for it, just constraining pretty much all the stuff that that could go wrong, and then it's ripped out of it. But nevertheless, the key on that one, if I go back personally, what I do, I ended up printing. And you're like, you're printing? Yeah, I print papers. Print papers. I grab a pen and I just go sit down and read them, highlight them, mark them, get ideas, scribble around them, etc. And I haven't, I'll be honest, I haven't done it in the last couple of months. There's a few that I put on my queue to go and read. Mostly because I wanted to understand, and I'm no ML expert, but I wanted to understand the tech heavily on also how was this bypasses and how are the safeguards done? Why are they working? Why are they not working? What are the holes, quote unquote, that still remain, right? And as we know in security, there's no perfect mitigation. There's no, I mean, the fail-safe is, I think, just unplug everything, turn everything off, throw it in the ocean, erase it. What am I getting? Well, no, that's not an option. So what is the right safeguards that we feel comfortable to make it work? And took time to make some of those decisions, brainstorming. Also, as I said, our product is just a bot, and you're writing, and you expect a response right back at you. You cannot wait. Well, give me 5 minutes until I do all this security, privacy checks, etc., to get a response. No, that doesn't work. So how can we make all of that work seamlessly? And it wasn't easy, right? Brainstorm, etc. And today I feel pretty good on what we ended up doing and how we are continuing to evolve. We do checks on the input. We do checks on the output. We do checks. We use several different large language models to provide the response, to make a determination what the information is, or an action that might needs to be taken, etc. And we use all of that to determine whether are they trying to do something malicious or not, right? And then based on that, we might stop the conversation, or we might just let it keep going, and then the response being generated. But the way I see it, our work is not done. And this is just a bit in general in the security space. It will continue to evolve. So going back to what I said, yeah, there are some papers that I'm going to be taking it down, print them. I haven't printed them yet. It's on my queue. Print them, and then go and scribble, get some additional ideas on what to do in this space, and keep iterating so we can keep getting better. But that for me is just the key on the learning on the space. And there are several startups that are trying to do how do you do security on the space. Obviously, the foundational models, those big companies are also trying to do the right thing. But context for me, it's one of those things that has been key to understand how are you using the product and what are the right safeguards that you need based on how you're using the product. So anyway, I mean, I'm being brief. We can go dive deep into further, but I think that's just a bit about the
I think it goes kind of full circle, right? Obviously, a part of my head, the comedy in my head is like, I bet Damien has a cost line in his security budget for paper. Because obviously you want to dissect things and look at various different, how the actual communication, rather than looking at, a load of logs, to look at, input validation, model scrutiny and everything else. And, I think sometimes going old school kind of really helps you think about a bigger picture. We even see it with architecture, where we're like, here's a massive lucid design, and it's like, just print it. Because then I know exactly where an ingress flow goes, or a VPC log connects, and whatever it may be. So, but I think another point to the topic is, the more education is out there, the more it will delimit fear around AI and machine learning. And I think also the more we get more of the community involved, like you look at the OWASP Top 10 LLM, and there's multiple other resources where people are now building models, or even open source tooling where you can kind of effectively stick models in to scan them for any kind of injection or anything that might be in there.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the more security research we have, the more that we can then use that as a source to kind of help us train any products that we're building, or that, someone's not putting in a prompt and it's telling you to go kill yourself, or you're like, oh my God, the share price just limits. Or you look at, our friends in China with a recent release, and it's like killing the industry because it's so cheap, but then it turns out the entire government's been funding it, and it's like not really cheap. It costs the exact same as Anthropic, or it's just like, again, I think when there's a miscommunication or a misdirection when it comes to AI, things can go crazy. And, again, I'm waffling, but anyway, any other kind of, anything else you want to add into that topic?
I think that the way I see it, and this is just my, you can argue, my experience. Maybe it tech continues to evolve. I remember getting, I'll date myself, and when Java was so popular, I ended up getting myself a full book of Java, just trying to go learn and understand it and all of that. This is what, it's still 90s, I think, late 90s. It's like it was all over the place, right? And also the kind of, I remember learning C++, right, as well. But tech evolves. I think we're at a very interesting inflection point, and what AI ML will hopefully make our lives better. There is risks with that, obviously. I know some people say, well, we shouldn't use it, or this or that. I use it. I actually, I found it to be very helpful. And in case you're wondering what do I use it, just I do write a lot of content just to help me refine, brainstorm, etc. I do that with people as well. It's not just there's like, oh, I only rely on that. No, but it's just a way to, how can I express my ideas better? I found that to be useful. So from my point of view, I'll say, assuming you understand the context, assuming you understand the risks, then you should figure out when and how to use it. Like one example that I remember reading online, more personal, like people were using it to figure out new recipes. And then there was some stuff that was just completely wrong, right? They ask you to put glue on some food or whatever. I'm like, yeah, okay. I wouldn't use it for that, but at least like, okay, if you need to brainstorm ideas, go over it. It's like, does this make sense? Why do you add this ingredient to this? And then, okay, there's a source. Let's look at that source. Also, how do you know that that person told the truth when they wrote their stuff? But whatever. Yeah. But at least you get some more interesting input. But for me, I think it's we're living in a very interesting and great times that we have this quote unquote additional extra companion and helper, right? So
it's almost like you. It's almost, Damian, you've lived through multiple good decades. Like, I wonder, what the next 10 years would look like. And then it's like, as long as you get hoverboards, I mean, come on, I'm sick of AI. Get me anti-gravity so I can have a hoverboard. Even though I'm remote working, I just pretend I have an office and go with my hoverboard, then come back. But anyway, sorry, I'm giving you too many waffle burgers at this time of night. But to conclude, Damien, we'll go into the one thing in cyber you think is BS, you feel needs clarity, or needs to change. Yeah.
So I think using the word BS is too strong, but I'll tell you one area where, number one, I don't have a good solution. I'm going to start by stating that, even though I haven't even tell you what it is. I don't have a good solution necessarily how to solve it, how to address it, which I don't like it, because for me, it's like, well, let me just throw the problem and run away. Like, okay, what's the solution, or what ideas do I have? So I don't have that fully vetted. I'll mention on a few ideas that I've seen around, but nevertheless. So this is about security questionnaires. Okay. If you're a SaaS company, either when you want to engage with a new vendor, etc., you give them a security questionnaire, and vice versa. When you're going to become, when they're going to become a customer, or somebody else is going to become a customer, they send you a security questionnaire. In principle, you can argue, well, that makes sense, right? So that way you can see kind of their security posture and all of this. From my point of view, a couple of problems in there. Number one, how do you validate their responses? How do you know what they're telling you is really true? They can tell you, yes, we do all of the stuff, but maybe they're not. And maybe they're not because, not saying they're lying, but they might have a misunderstanding, etc. Or, but anyways, I'm like, okay. Number two, that's just a single point in time that it's done. How do you ensure that the thing stays proper in an ongoing basis? Maybe the day after they fill out the questionnaire, one of the responses are no longer valid. And you're telling me, well, because some companies, they send it every year. Yeah, but every year is still, to me, very wishy-washy. So what are we really trying to accomplish? I mean, I think it's useful, like we're trying to understand the security merits of the different companies, what they have, their posture, etc. But I'm not sure that doing security questionnaires is just necessarily the right approach. At the same time, you can argue, going a little bit to the solutions, it's like, well, what if we have a score of the company, right, that some third party runs? And to this day, set aside that those tend to be pay to play, right? You have to pay to get a score, the appropriate score, right? I don't think that's quite right either, necessarily. So I don't believe on those just arbitrary security scores done by a third-party company. In some cases, they look at your website, what's visible from outside. There's no agent running inside looking at your infrastructure, etc. And even then, what is an agent running inside, right? Because you have your source code, you have your infra, you have your own quote-unquote internal network, right? So it's like, what is it really doing? But anyways, the one thing that I've seen lately, and I'm like, lately, I don't know, I think maybe there's one or two companies doing something along those lines, is from an insurance perspective, cyber insurance perspective, to be precise, where what they are doing in order to determine the right cyber insurance, rather than you filling out a questionnaire, they do an ongoing level assessment. They have some agents that run inside. They try to do, they have back bounties, etc., or doing pen testing, etc., against your assets and whatnot. But also, if they find something, it's not that your premium will go up. They tell you, hey, you have something, go fix it. And to some extent, it's interesting because insurance companies, usually, they don't want to pay. And in this context, right, they're like, well, if they fix their stuff, their risk profile gets lowered, right? So I'm like, oh, okay, that's an interesting approach. How is that related? Well, at the end of the day, the security questionnaire, from my point of view, you want to understand what is the risk of what this company has, right? So if that risk can be lower, and in an ongoing basis, I have an understanding. There's no perfect company here, right? But I have an understanding on what they're doing, etc. I'm like, okay, that could be helpful. I don't have a solution. I don't believe the security questionnaires necessarily are adding much value to understand the security posture of companies, but that's just a bit of where I'm coming from. Would AI help in the space? I don't know. Full disclosure.
Yeah, it's really
anyway.
interesting. It's a problem that no one seems to be able to solve, and I think whether it's they scan your website and give you an A+ or a B- or whatever. That's to me as we say in Scotland, tripe. It's absolute tripe. I've even heard people come up with a term procurement ops, where they would have maybe a specialist where they would do as much reconnaissance as they possibly can. So look at if there's been data breaches. They would look at, does the person have a trust center? Do they have a SOC 2 listed, ISO? That could then give a level of comfort of like a kind of initial engagement. But if you're on the other side of it, someone gives you like an Excel spreadsheet with 500 questions, it's like, could you just dump that into AI? AI then scans what you have and says, here's architecture, here's where firewalls are, here's all the endpoint stuff, XDR, whatever it might be, any other buzzword I can throw in, then kind of builds a nice picture to then go. Again, each industry is completely different. I've worked in so many industries where some are just super advanced and some are really, really basic. And, it takes them 6 months to fill in a questionnaire, or they're like, we don't have an IT person. And it's so I don't know, maybe another idea or ideas we've come up with might help someone go on a unicorn journey and, or go on Y Combinator, get some funding, and then they'll be like, oh, thank you so much, Damian and Leo. You helped me become a billionaire. Great. I want some equity, anyone? I'm not kidding it. I want some equity if something happens. I'm only joking. But yeah, any final thoughts then, Damian, before we wrap up?
I think for those of you maybe starting on your career, security, privacy career journey, I have seen. I started working in security before security was a thing. I started doing something similar with privacy. I mean, still, I don't think today you can get, maybe exception of one university, a degree on privacy necessarily, but that's starting to become more interesting. I think continues to change. So going around people starting on their career journey, I'll say stay challenged. There's gonna be difficult decisions you will have to make in life. There is no right or wrong. Should you stay as a manager? Should you stay as an individual contributor? Both paths will be fine. You're gonna learn from those experiences. You're gonna make mistakes, and that's fine. Right? Just recover, learn. Right? Yes, it's not nice when you make mistakes. I have my fair share of mistakes throughout my career, but I have hopefully learned and I have kept on going. So that's probably one core key takeaway of just keep the chin up, keep going. Things get easier and also a bit more difficult as you keep learning and growing on your career. But stay challenged, I'll say. It's, for me, keep on learning. It's just the key. So
I love it, Damian, and sage advice. And again, someone who has been involved in security at big companies before it was security, you've kind of really set a precedent. For anyone out there, please, all you need to do is Google Damian. The resume is incredible. And again, thank you so much for sharing your stories, Damian. I really hope people can take stuff away from this session and really apply that to their career and really help themselves out. And you're absolutely correct. Keep learning, keep rolling with the punches, and you can really make a difference in this industry. And again, Damian, we'll conclude. And again, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you as well, Leo. This has been fun. Appreciate it. And hopefully people benefit from it as well. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you.